sort of way everything that is wrong with Indian bureaucracy or Babudom. First, she was caught using a lal batti or a red light, which is a status symbol or a power trip symbol on her Audi A4 car, a luxury car. Then when social media was outraged by it, how is it that a young officer, IAS officer on probation can afford an Audi luxury car and ask for a lal batti on top of it? And social media folks started digging deeper into her antecedents. That's when it turned out to be even more sinister. It turns out that she faked her OBC certificate. She also has a fake disability certificate. How can someone be on such a power trip and the system, it turns out, is not doing anything? Also, her father is a retired IAS officer. Now, the point is, it completely ignores the fact that you are a civil servant, which means you are a servant of the civilian population, of the citizens of this country. And for all her faults, she has merely been wrapped on the knuckles with what they call a punishment transfer, a punishment posting. But what about actual punishment? How is it that an IAS officer, a young IAS officer on probation, can afford a luxury car and then goes on this power trip about having a red beacon light on top of that car? How does she own property worth few crores at the start of her career? And I believe there is documents to show that her parents own properties worth hundreds of crores. Isn't this an absolute mockery of the system? But first, the story.
ऑफिसर्स का केबिन मांगा जो कि ट्रेनिंग को नहीं मिलता है। उन्होंने खुद की ऑडी का जाकर वहाँ लेकर गई। उन्होंने अपनी गाड़ी पर रेड बीकन लगाया, रेड लैंप लगाया। तहसीलदार ने साफ साफ लिखा कि उनके और उनके पिताजी ने मुझे ऑफिस में आकर धमकी दी।
झूठे सर्टिफिकेट की जांच होनी चाहिए थी। एक आईएएस का सिलेक्शन होता है यूपीएससी में, तो ये बहुत सारी जांचें बहुत एकदम कड़क होती है। हम भी मांग करते हैं कि इसकी इंक्वायरी होनी चाहिए।
I'm not authorized to speak anything right now, so I cannot comment on this.
मैम, आज अपन ज्वाइन करना है?
Oh, I'm very happy to join in Washim district, and I'm looking forward to working in it.
All right, so let's get you an overview of this case and why is everyone so outraged by it. Number one, who is Puja Khedkar? She's a 2022 batch IAS officer. She's on probation, belongs to the Maharashtra cadre. She secured All India rank of 841 in the UPSC exam of 2022. She's currently in a probationary role as assistant collector in Puja and in Pune, and of course she got transferred from Pune. Puja Khedkar's father also happens to be a retired IAS officer. Now, the fraud, the charge against her is that she submitted fake disability and fake OBC certificates in order to get ahead in the competitive race that is in the IAS. Khedkar even submitted a mental illness certificate. Now, I don't know if such a certificate gives you any kind of leeway or cushion as far as the competitive IAS race is concerned. Puja Khedkar also skipped the verification that was necessary for the disability certificate. Now, here is the power trip. As an assistant collector or assistant collector rank, she went on to demand that she has an official car with a VIP beacon and a VIP number plate. She wanted what is the ubiquitous power symbol in this country, a lal batti on top of your car. Puja Khedkar fitted that VVIP beacon light on her private car, the private Audi A4 luxury car, which God knows how she could afford at age 22. She's also demanded an official chamber along with personal staff and a constable on duty as a personal security officer. She also refused the allotted chamber that was given to her because there was no attached bathroom in that chamber. She also put her name on the additional collector's office while the additional collector was away on leave. And then she demanded an official letterhead, visiting card, as well as nameplates for an officer, mind you, who is only on a probationary role as of right now. She also demanded official accommodation that is meant for senior IAS officers. And the action taken so far, this is where the story gets so outrageous. The action taken so far is merely a transfer to Washim district from Pune district so that she can complete her probation in Washim instead of Pune. The other action that's been taken is by the Pune police, who are probing her for violations of using the VVIP beacon light on her private Audi car. But we're getting some breaking news in connection with this story, and it's coming via the central government, which has now constituted a single-member committee which will be headed by an additional secretary rank officer who will look into this case of Puja Khedkar to try and verify her candidature claims, her disability claims, and other claims that have been submitted at the time that she got through the IAS. The committee will submit its report in 2 weeks. It'll be chaired, like I said, by a senior officer of the rank of additional secretary. Payal is now joining us with more details on this. So Payal, even the central government forced to take cognizance of this case and the sheer outrage that this case seems to have managed to generate on social media, certainly.
Of course, there was a lot of outrage against the officer, the way in which she conducted herself. The fact that, the Narendra Modi government here, Zaka the center said that nobody is a VIP in this country. And that's the reason every minister was asked to remove the red beacon light, if you remember, a couple of years ago as well. But with multiple violations coming to the fore, the central government has taken note of the entire matter. And the DOPT, which is, of course, the concerning ministry, has in fact now ordered inquiry through a one-member panel, which is, of course, the additional secretary level officer who have to submit the report within 2 weeks' time. So obviously, the center now jumps in, given the fact that this has created a huge outrage on social media and people otherwise as well.
All right, Payal, we'll leave it at that. So the central government constituting a committee headed by an additional secretary rank officer to probe how did this really junior civil servant, a probationary IAS officer, manage to get a red beacon light on her Audi A4 car, asking for an official chamber, visiting cards, etc., so on and so forth. Let me bring in our full panel joining us this evening here on Brass Tacks. Kiran Bedi is member of the Civil Services Association, former IPS officer, also former governor. She'll be joining us in a moment. Arun Bhatia is a retired IAS officer. Dr. Ajay Kumar, also formerly with the IPS, now spokesperson of the Congress Party. Susi Ben Shah is spokesperson of the Shiv Sena of the Shinde faction. And Vijay Kumbhar is the RTI activist who first brought this case to light. Vijay ji, main aapse shuru karta hoon. How did this case come to your light? Of course, everybody is talking about this lal batti on the Audi car, but it's beyond just that lal batti. Reportedly, she faked her OBC certificate, she faked her disability certificate. ये सब कैसे हुआ? मतलब how was it allowed to happen?
ये सब हुआ इससे कि उनको जो पहली पोस्टिंग मिलनी थी, नॉर्मली होम टाउन मिलता है रिटायरमेंट के एज के समय में, उनको पहली पोस्टिंग मिली, वो भी ट्रेनिंग की हैसियत से होम टाउन पुणे मिला. उसके बाद एक्चुअली मुझे इससे कोई लेना देना नहीं था, लेकिन जब उनकी जो उन्होंने कारनामे किए कि ऑडी गाड़ी लेके गई, रेड बीकन की लाइट मांगी, बंगले मांगे, सिक्योरिटी मांगी, और उन्होंने वो जो तहसीलदार था उनके पास वो अपने पिताजी को लेकर गई, उनको धमकी दे दी कि मुझे एक अच्छा ऑफिस मिलना चाहिए, नहीं तो बुरा होगा. ये सारी धमकी रिकॉर्ड पर आ गई, ये सारी बातें सोशल मीडिया में आ गई. उसके बाद लोगों ने पूछना शुरू किया कि ये कैसे हो रहा है. फिर मेरे हमेशा की उसकी वजह से मुझे भी शक हुआ कि जो आईएएस ऑफिसर शुरू में ही उनको पूरी तरह से काम करना शुरू करना, उसके साथ ही अगर इतनी बड़ी गड़बड़ करती है तो कहीं ना कहीं उनके सारे जो डॉक्यूमेंट्स है या उनका जो कुछ भी यहाँ तक आना है उसमें कुछ ना गड़बड़ हो सकते. उसके बाद मैंने जो पब्लिक डॉक्यूमेंट्स है जो सरकार की वेबसाइट पर है वहां से डॉक्यूमेंट लेने शुरू कर दे, और उसका जो एनालिसिस किया उसमें समझ में आया कि उन्होंने नॉन क्रिमिलियर में गड़बड़ कर दिए, उन्होंने मेडिकल में मेडिकल बोर्ड के सामने नहीं हो गए, उन्होंने मल्टीपल डिसेबिलिटीज दिखाई दे रही है. और उनका जो
Let me ask Kiran Bedi this. Ma'am, generally there is a suspicion, if not a distrust, if you will, of ordinary people of IAS, IPS, etc. In this case, this case sort of exemplifies why there is that mistrust. Because how can you have a 22-year-old on probation officer demanding a lal batti on her Audi luxury car, demanding that she get a different chamber, a better chamber, because her current chamber did not have an attached bathroom. She wanted a personal staff as well as a personal security officer. I mean, to my mind, this is just outrageous. This is why people are distrustful of the bureaucracy in general. It's because of officers such as this.
I think, first of all, I'm glad the Home Ministry has set up an inquiry, because now we will know what she has also to say. Why did she do what she did? It's very good. So we need to wait for the inquiry, number one. Zaka, but if whatever has been reported so far, if it's true, then obviously she's an exception to the rule. I've not seen any probationers, I've not heard of probationers doing this kind of behavior at all. So I think she is a rarity and an exception, and she's come with a very strange mindset. I think we need to go back to her interview. What kind of interview did she have with the interview board and the UPSC? It will be very interesting to see what did she say to the questions which the UPSC asked. So I think what's this happening is an exception to the rule. I have not seen probationers conducting themselves in this manner at all. So I don't generalize.
But
I would not
doesn't it exemplify to you a sense of entitlement? You know, there is a phrase on the street that is very often used in this country, "Janta hai mera baap kaun hai." In this case, this is an exemplification of that. She knows that her father is a retired IAS officer. She comes from an elite and privileged background. If that means she can bend the system, she's bending the system. That's exactly what has happened.
So she's come with a mindset. I would still say this is not the rule. I think this is turning out to be an exception, and we should see it as an isolated case, because this is not the training. This is not the sensitization with these probationers are coming. In fact, they're coming with very heightened understanding of conscientious and sensitivity and public service. I think we need to understand what's gone wrong with this person. So therefore, go back to the interview, what kind of interview she had. And number two, of course, she's a probationer. And if the inquiry establishes it, she can be discharged because she's still on probation. She's not confirmed. So as long as she's not confirmed, the government could let her go.
Arun Bhatia is also a retired IAS officer. The second part of this story, which again is why people are outraged about it, is had this happened to anyone else who perhaps does not have this sense of entitlement, or whose father was not a retired IAS officer, not asking for a lal batti on an Audi car, is the fact that what is this punishment? This punishment is just a transfer from Pune to Washim. It's not even a punishment. It's just a rap on the knuckles. Shouldn't there be more serious action taken against the likes of Puja Khedkar, if nothing else, to try and make an example that, you know, IAS officers, IPS officers, babus as the common man calls them, should not think that they are some kind of first-class citizens and the rest of us are second-class citizens.
Yeah, you're right. 2 points. First, I would like to disagree that this is a rare case. It is rare because the probationer has done it. That is rare. But an IAS officer being corrupt is not rare. When we talk of the whole country being corrupt, do we still want to say that everybody is corrupt, all the departments are corrupt? But the IAS officers sitting at the head of each department, controlling these vast empires, they are not corrupt, they are honest. In front of his nose, money is being taken, money is being collected, but he is innocent. So it's not rare. The IAS officer is as corrupt as any other officer of any other department. That's number one. And we are always trying to shield him because we like to believe that yes, they are honest, they come through an examination process, impartial selection, the brains in the country. You don't require brains, you require values and dedication, honesty. You must have a track record of working as an NGO, sensitivity to poverty, integrity. Those aspects are not checked by the UPSC or getting 100 marks out of 100 in mathematics. So the first point I want to make is the IAS is as corrupt, maybe more, because they're handling bigger jobs, bigger departments, more responsibility. Number two, yes, of course, what is happening now is farcical because the tribe supports itself. The officers support each other because most of them are in this game. If they run against the system, they'll be ousted. So what needs to be done now is a simple FIR. The collector of Pune should put an FIR where there's fabrication of documents, that is forgery. It's a very heavy section. So by now, the FIR should have been given. How much do you want to study this case? How many days?
You know,
an hour or two?
the other thing that is outrageous, and I want to get Ajay Kumar to weigh in on this because he's a former IPS officer, left the service, is now a political party spokesperson. Dr. Ajay Kumar, how can a person, a young woman in this instance, fake an OBC certificate, fake a disability certificate? I mean, from whatever we can see on the pictures, she seems perfectly able-bodied. There is no disability from what we can see in the pictures. And most importantly, she's also apparently given what is a mental illness or a mental health certificate. Now, this is the first time I'm hearing that there is some kind of concession for mental illness or mental health considerations to make it through to the IAS.
So, Zaka, few points. One is I don't totally disagree with what Dr. Kiran Bedi said for the simple reason is it is not an exception. You had an ASP who tortured father and son in Tamil Nadu with rods and irons and they were in ICU and it's common. Second issue is every collector, you go to the Hindi belt, there are 5 cars ahead of the SP, 5 cars behind the SP, 5 cars ahead of the collector. You look at any guy in the civil services today, the kind of the flaunting which is happening it's an epidemic. So it didn't, like Mr. Bhatia said, it happened in the probationers, fine. But the rot is an institution. Now UPSC, honestly, I never thought it would happen. What was UPSC doing? And that is the critical question which all of us seem to miss. How can you not verify a physical differently able
disability, yeah.
Country.
Yep.
So how can you not do it? First question. So the rot in the UPSC, whether it is institutions across India, but the UPSC rot, like the NTA, and it's not political. Let me be very candid. How did the UPSC not have a physical disability confirmed? That means you're not confirming SC certificates. That means you're not confirming OBC certificates. That means anybody who's close to political people. The father has 100 crores, God save this country. He's an IAS officer. The daughter sits in Audi, God save this country. But the institution of the UPSC is totally diseased. At least I thought I would never say it. But because that means you are pushing people who you like or don't like or for consideration and not verifying those certificates. So there will be new as tribal boys who are getting who are not tribals. And that is what scares me. In my time, when we were in service, there were 1 or 2 people whose inquiries happened. There were there was an IPS officer whose inquiry was conducted. There was a couple of IAS people and they were dismissed from service. But the issue is that this girl didn't go for the medical exam. And the UPSC still issued 800 rank. You don't get 800 rank with the Indian Administrative Service. It finishes off in the first 100 or 115 or so.
Yep.
So she got the IAS because she claimed she was physically disabled. Or OBC, I don't know. I don't think even the OBC finishes at 200 odd, if I remember those rankings, even now. So my question to you, sir, is why isn't the story on the finishing of the UPSC, NTA, the chairman of NTA, the chairman of UPSC, and I'm not holding grudge for the RSS or anybody else, but the institutional integrity. And this is what is going to ruin everything. The only thing which was safe in this country was elections and competitive exams. 2 things. We have seen NEET. Now we have seen UPSC. God save us, because UPSC, I never thought. This shocked me for the simple reason that the UPSC didn't verify. So the inquiry should see who in UPSC was responsible for passing this girl's physical disability certificate and giving her a letter of appointment without the verification.
So Susiben Shah, as far as I understand, forgery is a crime as per the, previously as per the Indian Penal Code and now as per the Nyaya Sanhita. Why has the Pune police not registered a case for forging documents, for misleading authorities? Yes, they filed a case for, this whole Lal Batti business, but that's not the gravest crime that this young IAS officer is accused of.
Good evening to all, and Mrs. Zaka, I'd like to tell this. As far as Puja is concerned, Puja Khedkar is concerned, she's a irresponsible, who believes in high-handed behavior and a pompous officer with a sense of entitlement. But there are many such IAS officers, especially in Maharashtra cadre, who have illustrious career, who've served the country in the true sense of the word, especially Maharashtra. So let us not throw away baby with the bathwater. Having said that, the state government has nothing to do with the selection and appointment of IAS officers. Let me tell you that. Here today we have a
Ma'am,
Sarkar.
the fact that this happens to be a young IAS officer is one part of it. But at the core of it is that she's forged documents. She's produced fake certificates. That's a crime. Whether you do it or I do it or Kiran Bedi does it or anybody on this panel does it, that's a crime as per the law of this land. Why aren't you registering a case for that?
But you are right, Mrs. Zaka, and therefore it has to be clearly established. As far as IAS officer are concerned, there are procedures, there are tribunals, there are CAT. If we want to really pin her down and expel her, due process of law, the rules have to be followed, which will further strengthen the case. No, we are not a banana republic.
Ma'am, my understanding is anything starts with an FIR. In this case, in this express instance, the FIR has been registered for why she has asked for a lal batti. That's the only FIR, the criminal case that's been booked as far as this particular individual is concerned. My point is, irrespective of whether UPSC takes cognizance, I believe we just broke that story about the centre forming a one-member additional secretary level officer committee to probe into this. All that is fair enough. But at the core of it is that she's forged a certificate. That is forgery. That is cheating.
Why are we in a great hurry and circumventing the law? Now there is a one-man SIT form.
Okay.
It will move swiftly. Whether you file an FIR today or 2 days thereafter with proper investigation, which one is better?
Arun Bhatia wants to come in. If ordinary people in this country are accused of forgery, immediately the police will file an FIR. I don't think they'll wait for the central government to form a committee.
I should be given a second.
Let Arun Bhatia come in, please. Yes, he was raising his hand. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Bhatia. Mr. Bhatia.
Okay. Now the point raised was that there is a procedure that we are protected by the Constitution, the IAS. Correct?
Okay.
That is, if you want to suspend an IAS officer, you require the sanction of the Government of India. If you want to impose penalty, dismissal, reduction in rank, stoppage of increment, you require the concurrence of the central government. For filing an FIR for a prima facie offence, no permission is required. It is the duty of the collector because the probationer reports to the collector. The collector will check the credentials.
Has already filed the report.
As forgery is found, immediately an FIR should have been sent to the police station in Pune. It's not been done because obviously there is pressure. In a normal case, it would have happened. How long do you want to take for examining these documents? You see, you can add more accused in the case. If some UPSC member is at fault, you can, again, send the supplementary charge sheet. You can add him as an accused. You can add witnesses at any stage of the proceedings. But now,
let me ask Kiran Bedi, and Mr. Kumbar is here. He is the RTI activist who brought this to light in the first place. And Kiran Bedi ji, as per the documents through RTI that have been accessed by Mr. Kumbar, this person's father, Puja Khedkar's father, who also was an IAS officer, owns, between the father and the mother, they own property worth over 100 crores. Puja herself, who's just in her early 20s, just starting her career, has property worth 10 or 15 crores. Now, isn't this a fair question to ask? When people of this country are struggling, when a quarter of the population or a fifth of the population is below the poverty line even today, how is it that a 22-year-old who is just starting her career has property worth 10 or 15 crores and her IAS officer retired father has property worth hundreds of crores?
Well, that could be another area for inquiry when the government is appointed. Now, but at the moment, I think there are two separate things. One is a probationer's conduct. I was answering your question concerning a probationer. I was not answering your question concerning a service as a whole. That is why I was specific, saying let's isolate the case and not brush the service as a whole. And in her case, an inquiry has been appointed. All these deficiencies, all delinquencies will come up to surface. It won't take long. And I already said, if the inquiry establishes that she has done these misconduct, she's still a probationer. and not confirmed, she can be discharged from service. I think that's the relief, that you don't have to go on to any other law courts. Because non-confirmation means that she can be discharged as a probationer. So I think that is what we need to watch on, that as soon as the inquiry is concerned, her misconduct, rather than instituting another inquiry on an FIR can go simultaneously, no doubt about it. If there's but we can even go back. What did the UPSC do? Why did they not verify these certificates before an appointment letter is done? Because these documents ought to have been verified, but that would be a matter of investigation now, once an FIR is registered and that she had gone false. But as far as she as a probationer is concerned, I'm not talking of the service as a whole. That's not what I got your end. I'm talking of she as a probationer. I don't see many probationers doing exactly what she did. I've seen probationers
wanted to come in, and then I'll go to Mr. Kumbar. I have a question about the RTI and what he has discovered in the RTI application that he filed. But yeah, Susi Ben.
No. Allow me, Mrs. Aka, 2 seconds uninterrupted. You see, as far as the IAS officers are concerned, as I said, UPSC controls their appointment and selection. Having said that, once an IAS officer is appointed, and Mr. Chaudhary will agree with me, we as people's representative have to go back to the people after 5 years. Here they have a clear-cut 35 years in service with no questions asked. Maybe there is a time, this is the time for us to review this procedure. Maybe after 5 years, should there be a recheck, kind of a question answers to them? That's one part. Secondly, as far as this government is concerned, the Mahayuti government is concerned, especially headed by Honorable Chief Minister, it's a no-nonsense government. We stand any privileges. He's dead against our Chief Minister with what of responsibility. I can say he's against any entitlement or VIP culture.
So even file today, an FIR, ma'am, for what is expressly an egregious offence. Please file an FIR for forgery.
Yes.
What are you waiting for?
You see, Mrs. Aka, there cannot be knee-jerk reactions. There cannot be decision taken in a TV studio whether an FIR.
So then why was she transferred? Was that also knee-jerk? Why was she transferred from Pune to Washim? Was that also knee-jerk?
Ms. Bedi will bear me out. We are just waiting, as she rightly said, inquiry that forms the basis for you to.
No, you should have waited for the inquiry before transferring her also. No,
it will be a swift. No, if you are not willing to give any time for a.
Ma'am, I am just asking a question basis your answer. You said we'll wait for the inquiry before we file an FIR, but already she's been transferred. What has she been transferred for then?
Bear me out that no FIR can be filed unless investigated thoroughly.
Okay.
It will not stand before the court of law.
कुंबर जी ये बताइए आपके जो RTI एप्लीकेशन से ये भी बाहर आ गया था कि इनके जो पिताजी हैं जो रिटायर्ड IAS ऑफिसर है और उनके माताजी हैं बिटवीन देम कोई 100 करोड़ प्लस के प्रॉपर्टीज उनके नाम पे हैं.
ये बताऊंगा, लेकिन उससे पहले एक बात जरूर कहना चाहूंगा. ये सारे लोग जो बोल रहे हैं कि FIR के लिए इंतजार करना चाहिए, एक चीज तो साफ है, तहसीलदार ने सीधा लिख कर दिया है कि उनके पिताजी और उन्होंने मुझे धमकी दी कि मुझे अगर अच्छा नहीं ऑफिस में मिला तो आपको बुरा हो जाएगा. वो कलेक्टर को उन्होंने रिपोर्ट दिया. तो इसमें FIR क्यों नहीं होता? आम आदमी जाता है तो अगर थोड़ी ऊंची आवाज में बोलता है तो उस पर FIR होता है. तो फिर यहाँ FIR क्यों नहीं होगा?
और ये तहसीलदार ने लिख के दिया है, मतलब वो भी सरकारी नौकरी है.
तो ये होना चाहिए था. दूसरी बात, इसमें मैंने कहीं भी RTI नहीं डाला. ये सारे डॉक्यूमेंट्स है. उनका बर्ताव सामने आने के बाद सेक्शन 4 में जो डॉक्यूमेंट्स जैसे कि ECI में उनका एफिडेविट है या UPSC की वेबसाइट पर उनके सारी जानकारी होती है, कैट की वेबसाइट की, यहाँ से भी जानकारी लेकर मैंने उसका एनालिसिस किया. इनका जो पिताजी का प्रॉपर्टी सामने है, 110 एकड़ उनके फैमिली में खेती की जमीन है. महाराष्ट्र में एग्रीकल्चर लैंड सीलिंग एक्ट है, उसमें 54 से ज्यादा एकड़ जमीन वो रख नहीं सकते.
और इनके पास कितना है? इनके पास कितना है?
110 एकड़.
110 एकड़ जमीन है इनके पास, which is against the Maharashtra Land Ceiling Act.
नहीं, महाराष्ट्र एग्रीकल्चर लैंड सीलिंग एक्ट. मैं ULC की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ. एग्रीकल्चर लैंड सीलिंग.
Okay. So you're not supposed to, as per the Maharashtra Agricultural Land Ceiling Act, one person, one entity, one individual is not supposed to have more than 54 acres of agricultural land. इनके साथ 110 एकड़ agricultural land है. Wow.
7 फ्लैट्स है, उसमें से एक लोखंड वाला में
Yeah, Mr. Bhatia.
6
Yeah.
शॉप्स है जिनका पूरा एरिया 1,60,000 स्क्वायर फीट है. कमर्शियल प्रॉपर्टी 1,60,000
1,60,000 square feet of commercial
17
property.
लाख का वॉच है.
Wow.
डायमंड्स है.
Mr.
मैं ये नहीं बोलता कि कोई भी कमा सकता है, उसमें कोई दिक्कत
Yeah,
नहीं
Mr.
है.
Bhatia. Yeah.
लेकिन अगर इतने प्रॉपर्टी आपके
Yeah.
पास है तो आपको
Ji Kumbar ji. Okay. Okay. Yeah,
तो
Mr. Bhatia.
इतने अगर
And then
आपके
I'll come to
पास
Dr.
property
Kumar
तो
after that. Yeah.
I just want to clarify one point, because we are keeping on being told, inquiry hua, it will be investigated, why are you in a hurry, can't you wait, all the facts have to be gone into. For lodging an FIR, the police only need prima facie evidence of an offence. That is there. After the FIR is registered, the police does a more detailed investigation for preparation of the charge sheet. So the point that people are making and I'm making is that there is enough ground for an FIR. If the FIR is not being registered, obviously it is pointing to some sort of pressure.
No, so in this case, Mr. Kumbar is saying that the Tehsildar has given a written complaint saying that I've been threatened by this lady officer and her retired officer father. And that nothing has happened on that complaint. No action has been taken on that complaint. No FIR has been filed on that complaint.
I was just going to come to that because I didn't know about that. I've just heard it now on the panel. That is enough ground for an FIR
to register an FIR. Correct.
It's not even 24 hours.
So Dr. Ajay Kumar, now as people in social media, on television debates, as this story gains traction, now we've just heard from Kumbarji and I'm astounded. Here you have the father of this officer in question has 110 acres of agricultural land when by an act of the Maharashtra Assembly, you are barred from holding more than 54 acres of agricultural land. He has more than twice of that.
Zaka, one thing my colleague from the Shiv Sena, they said, I'm not going to score political point, but it's in a political point. Which government posted her in a home district? Whether it is the minister, it wouldn't have been a minister for sure. It must have been some chief secretary, the secretary training or something who did the probation's posting in Maharashtra, not central government. And the Maharashtra government must have sent her to her home district. It smells. You know, at least I've been probationer, Dr. Bedi's been, Arun Subhatia has been, and everybody's been a probationer, obviously, when they joined. And I don't even imagine this kind of nonsense could happen. So she goes to the home district, thanks to Maharashtra government, somebody in the government, I'm not saying politics. Second issue, even if an IAS officer doesn't spend a rupee in his life and earns his salary and you average it out to 1.5 lakhs to 2 lakhs for 35 years of service, it works out to 4 to 5 crores. That's it. If he doesn't eat, he doesn't bathe, he doesn't buy soap. Okay? He doesn't bathe, he doesn't buy soap, he doesn't buy petrol. The total amount of salary is average it out in 35 years is 1.5 lakhs into, because you get 2.5 lakhs at the end, but you get less than 1 lakh at the beginning. So it's average of 1.5. You multiply it into 30 years of service. All right. What I'm saying is it's a joke. The property, all the top. No, one sec. I'll finish.
The state government has nothing to do with it.
One sec, madam, I don't interrupt you, so please don't interrupt.
Yeah, Chaudhary ji.
The top, no politician stays in fancy houses like Arun and Kiranji are exceptions, so I accept that. But you look at you will hardly find on the central part of Delhi, all civil servants, nobody's asking these questions. Nobody seems to ask these questions to the income tax and the great enforcement directorate. All the top prime properties of central Delhi, Hyderabad,
what
Mumbai,
does the state government have to do with it? Have a robust UPSC system.
Madam, let me complete, ma'am. Let me complete. Interrupt you. Why do you do this?
I'm also running out of time, so 10 seconds, Dr. Kumar. Yeah, I've got to wrap up. Yeah.
Institutions. There are lots of good people, fact of life, but there's a huge amount of bad people now in the system.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Like I said, this case, and the reason why we're putting it up on the 9 o'clock show tonight is because I think it's touched a raw nerve amongst common people. Reactions have been pouring in on our social media handles, on our website, homepage, etc. as to how can a young officer get away with this. There is a reeking sense of entitlement which is what people are upset about, that she has a luxury car, wants a red beacon on top of it, has demanded for a separate additional chamber, all kinds of demands, which is all born out of a sense of entitlement, that she is entitled to a different set of treatment from ordinary citizens, and that is what people have taken grave offense to, and that's why people have been outraged by the story. All right, let's move on to the next segment, which is that we've seen elections now in Britain, France, even Iran, all of it showing a gradual shift towards more left and perhaps progressive and reformist politics, and the fears of a rise of more right-wing hardline agendas, that for the time being, at least in these polities, seems to have been given, if not a full stop, certainly a comma. But all of this, how does this portend with the upcoming big election in the United States? There it is, Donald Trump squaring off against Joe Biden, given recent polls indicating disaffection with democracy. Remember the Pew Research survey that came out, which suggested that in the West, particularly in America, Britain, France, etc., more than a majority of the people are left with the feeling that democracy is not working for them, that it is working only for the elites. But with the results now in France and Britain in particular, with the comeback of center-left parties, is that also a reminder from the electorates there that democracy functions best when the center is strong? I want to first lay down this in an explainer for our viewers, and then I'll speak to Sir Martin Wolf, who's the chief economics commentator of the Financial Times. After Britain and France, now Iran too seems to have voted for a reformist progressive candidate. With the election of Masoud Pezeshkian as president, Iran may see a softening of its stand both domestically and in foreign policy. It could even throw open a window of opportunity for a new diplomatic opening. Pezeshkian, who's a cardiologist, a member of parliament and a former health minister, has little direct experience in foreign policy. But he has pledged to empower Iran's globalist diplomats to run his foreign agenda, and that raises hopes of a much warmer relationship with the West. Pezeshkian represents a more pragmatic posture and less confrontational approach, both towards the outside and also in the inside. But Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei would do a great deal to limit Pezeshkian's international agenda. Most of the Iranian president's powers are confined to domestic issues. It is Khamenei who, as the country's highest political and religious official, makes all of the major policy decisions, particularly in foreign affairs and the contentious nuclear program of Iran. The other leading power in the Iranian system is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which oversees all of Iran's military matters. The Revolutionary Guards and the Supreme Leader are closely aligned. They decide how and when to use military force, whether they need to unleash their proxies in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, or even in threatening Israel. Iran's foreign policies have grown increasingly hardline in recent years, and that trend may well continue under President Pezeshkian. That includes solidifying alliances with other authoritarian states like Russia and China. Iran has been providing Russia with drones in its war against Ukraine. Tehran was one of the few places that Vladimir Putin has visited outside of the near neighborhood of Russia since the beginning of this war. Where the Iranian president may have the greatest effect internationally is in shaping how Iran's policies are viewed around the world, largely through the diplomats that he selects. And in this respect, the contrast between Pezeshkian and the man who challenged him, the anti-Western, ultra-conservative Saeed Jalili, is stark. Jalili used to be a foreign minister in the previous regime during the hardline presidency of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Ahmadinejad had flatly opposed any deal with world powers to limit Iran's nuclear program in exchange for relief from sanctions. Instead, he had pushed to enrich uranium to weapons grade. His approach, in fact, led to Iran's isolation. In fact, Ahmadinejad did not believe in the value of dealing with the West. Domestically, too, Pezeshkian wants to allow a modicum of freedom to ordinary Iranian citizens, particularly women. The current round of Iranian state repression of the freedoms of common people started with the murder of Iranian activist Mahsa Amini. Pezeshkian promised more freedoms to the voters, and they in turn responded by giving him the mandate. But it's not just in Iran. There has been a slew of so-called hardline strongman leaders who have come to power in the last decade, from Europe to America to the Middle East, on the platform of hard-right nationalism. Many of them have anti-immigrant policies, and oftentimes they've also railed against globalization. From Erdogan in Turkey to Narendra Modi in India to Donald Trump in America, these leaders upended the established status quo because they projected themselves as outsiders. They promised to correct the system, a system which they believe was needlessly being politically correct and thereby affecting vast majorities. Problem is, after a point, after almost a decade in power in many of these places, people have started railing back against these very same instincts. Both Erdogan and Modi recently suffered reverses in elections that were held in Turkey and in India, respectively. They have both been cut down to size with chastened mandates from their respective people. More recently, in Britain and France, there's been a decisive tilt towards the left. In both countries, the centre-right and the far-right have been rejected. Voters in Britain ended 14 years of conservative rule with as many as 5 prime ministers in 5 years. And in France, the leftists and the centrists joined ranks to keep out the far-right under Marine Le Pen. One main reason for this is the people at the lower end of the economic pyramid have been hit hardest because of the cost of living crisis, certainly both in Britain as well as in France. And this has been set off because of international factors like the Russia-Ukraine war, COVID. There are also local factors. In Turkey, for example, the weakening of the Turkish currency, demonetization in India, in which 80% of the currency in circulation was removed. There is also a massive cost of living crisis that has been fueled in the developed world. The solution to this, from the far right, particularly the likes of Marine Le Pen, is to throw out the immigrants. That is also the response of Republicans under Donald Trump in America. Illegal immigration has become perhaps the biggest issue in the US election. But the response from the left has been A, to join forces to try and stop the right, and also introduce measures which the majority feels would alleviate the lot of those who are stuck at the bottom end of the pyramid. For example, in France, Jean-Luc Mélenchon's party has made a promise of raising France's minimum wage and also reducing the retirement age from 64 to 60. These seem to have worked more with voters at the bottom end of the pyramid. Voters also joined forces from the far left to the centrists in a bid to block out the far right. In a way, what these left parties have managed to do is to subsume the immigration debate into the overall quality of life debate. There is also the counter view to this, which is that democracy itself is at stake. A latest Pew Research study is out which seems to suggest that a large majority of folks in developed countries like America, Britain, and France seem to feel that democracy does not work for them anymore. In America, the percentage of those who are dissatisfied with democracy is close to 70%. And in a developing country like India, that figure is just 20%. Even though a fifth of the population in India lives on less than $2 a day. That view seems to show that people are disillusioned in a way with the elitist nature of politics under the likes of Trump or Boris Johnson, who are seemingly sitting in their ivory towers far away from the problems and travails of ordinary working class people. The democratic correction in Britain and France seems to be the electorate's way of saying that democracy works only if the center is strong, and that democracy is not pretty or, for that matter, electable when it is on either extreme. All right, so are Britain and France, and thereby, as a consequence, Europe itself, seeing a leftward turn? Joining me now is Sir Martin Wolf. He's the chief economics commentator with the Financial Times newspaper. Thank you very much, Sir Martin Wolf, for joining us. Let me start off by asking you, with the election victories in Britain and France, Labour coming back to power after 14 years, in France, a left-wing coalition all set to form power, do you see this as a turning point, kind of a defining moment, if you will, in the politics of Europe, where after a decade or so of centre-right governments in a number of places in Europe, is Europe now taking a leftward turn?
it's very complicated. I think there are 2 or 3 answers to this. First, what we've seen above all is the fickleness of politics, if you like, the instability of politics. There's a lot of evidence that voters are unhappy. There's a loss of trust in government, and that their ties, their allegiance to their past parties, the parties they used to believe in, has gone. So they are very fickle. And so I don't think this is necessarily permanent in any way. I could imagine quite a different government in Britain or maybe in France 5 years or so from now. So that's the first point. Second, you have to remember that the centre-right is still very powerful in Europe. It's certainly, the far right is certainly rising, and it's done very well in the European parliamentary election. So I think it's definitely a mistake to say that the far right is gone. However, it's crucial to remember that in no country has the far right got close to a majority of the votes. France is probably the country in which it's biggest. And that being so, if the other parties and the supporters of the other parties unite, as they clearly have done, either directly, they've united formally, or they have through agreements among parties or simply decisions of voters to vote against the far right loses. So I would say it's not a new era of stability. What it shows is the far right is ultimately still a minority in every country. There is lots of resistance to it, which is complicated. And the big point, I think, is the future of European politics is rather unpredictable now, and I certainly would not dare to predict it.
How would you square this, Sir Martin Wolf, with what is happening on the other side of the Atlantic with the US elections? There is a lot of pressure on the incumbent Democratic President Joe Biden to withdraw from the race. He's had a very poor debate performance. There are very big question marks on his capability, his mental faculties, and what looks like an inevitable return of Donald Trump.
Well, I think it's basically the same story in the sense that in one respect, the US is deeply divided. Remember, the Republicans haven't won a plurality of the vote in a presidential election for a very long time. Donald Trump never won a plurality of the vote. So it's not as if the Americans are all far right. Nothing is further from the truth. Of course, the American electoral setup is very peculiar, so you can win the presidency with a minority of the votes. And of course, events make a big difference. My own guess would be that a strong candidate, if Biden were fully healthy and vigorous, running on his record, which has really been quite impressive, he would win pretty comfortably. As it is, through the bad luck or the mistake of sticking with him when it was becoming obvious, must have been obvious, that he was not in good form and was deteriorating, and they're choosing a man of 82 who will be 86 at the end of his term.
Yeah.
That might well open the way to Donald Trump. But it's important to stress, whatever Donald Trump does with his presidency, and I'm pretty frightened about it, he doesn't have a majority of the American population and never has. And that's not going to change.
I do want to ask you, over the last few years, particularly with the rise of Trump and Erdogan in Turkey and Modi here in India, in the democratic world, there seemed to be an affinity towards strongmen rulers. There was a growing sense of fatigue with the establishment, with the status quo. Do you see that changing? There's, for example, a new Pew Research poll out today which suggests that particularly in the developed world, people are not happy with democracy. They don't see democracy as working for them. Do you see any of that changing given the results that we've seen in both Britain and France?
Well, I think that's a very complicated story. I would say, if you look around the world, right at the moment, it looks a bit encouraging for those of us on the liberal democratic side, broadly defined. I would put, if I may say, Mr. Modi in a slightly different category because he's the only strongman ruler I can think of in the broadly democratic world who's actually competent. He is unquestionably a highly competent person. But I must say, I, along with many others, was very encouraged by the recent Indian election because it shows the Indian people still can make up their own minds, which is utterly wonderful. So he's been a bit chastened, which always seems to be a good thing. Mr. Erdogan had a very bad election result in the local elections. He's been in power a long time and he's made quite a mess. So I'm optimistic he might go. As long as there are still elections, proper elections, there's always the possibility of turfing them out. The British and the French elections both show that the centre-left is alive. It still has sizable support. And of course, in both cases, the people have been voting against the incumbent power system. In French, Macron, they're clearly totally fed up with him. And in Britain, they were totally fed up with the Conservatives, who were a shambles. You're absolutely right. The cost of living crisis, these economic shocks have been very important. We've had huge shocks, the pandemic, the inflation, the energy price surge. All these explain the dissatisfaction with governments. The immigration is a huge political problem too. But ultimately, I think if the government is a shambles, one of the great glories of democracy is we can get rid of it without a revolution, without a civil war. And this is, to me, one of the most wonderful things about democracy. And I would say, looking around so far, it's been working not too badly. And it's just what I would like. If you think of China, they will never get rid of Xi Jinping, even though in my view they should. So I still believe and trust that the people will make the right decision in the end.
All right, we'll leave it at that. So Martin Wolf, as always, a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for joining us here on CNN News 18.
पूछिए, हमें कोई होटल ले जाने की जरूरत नहीं है.
So Prithviraj Chavan says we don't feel the need to camp any of our nominees in hotels, any of our members in hotels, any of our politicians. Anywhere in Maharashtra, we're not really fearing any poaching bids. But the political situation, viewers, in Maharashtra has remained volatile since 2019 assembly elections, with the state seeing collapse of 2 governments so far, swearing in of 3 chief ministers that's happened. In fact, it was a little over 2 years ago that the MLC elections saw cross-voting in the then ruling Mahavikas Aghadi government, which, remember, comprised of the Congress, Undivided Shiv Sena and the NCP. And this in favor of the BJP. This was considered as the first step towards the collapse of the Uddhav Thackeray-led government, is why there are so many fears attached to the MLC elections this time around. But let me take in a word from Preeti, my colleague, joining us live with more details. Preeti, it's an important election tomorrow. You know, many see it as a semi-final to the assembly election slated for later this year. But what's the current situation looking like? While, you know, politicians are not really coming out to admit that there's a little bit of a resort politics that's being witnessed, it appears that that is the ground reality.
Yeah, the resort politics has already started in Maharashtra Legislative Council election, and besides this, already Eknath Shinde-led Shiv Sena and the Shiv Sena led by the Uddhav Thackeray has already shifted all his MLA to the 5-star hotel in Tajlands and even the hotel. Besides this, BJP core committee meeting is going on at the party headquarters, and in this meeting, BJP observer Bhupen Yadav, who came to Mumbai yesterday night, and he is also attending this meeting. And BJP and Congress, both the party, are confident that all his MLC candidates will win this election. But besides this, there are unrest, especially in the Ajit Pawar faction and the Sharad Pawar factions.
Okay, all right. Now, Preeti, it's very interesting that, like I just said a few minutes ago, it's 2.5 years ago when the MLC elections took place, and we saw the political scenario completely turn around in Maharashtra. From then to now, a lot of changes have taken place. The alliances stand completely different than they were back in the day. Has that lowered down this manner in which some of these allies fear, poaching bids or cross-voting, or is the situation still the same?
The fear is there in Maha Vikas Aghadi as well as in Maha Yuti also, because cross voting is likely to take place, because in 2 years ago when this MLC election took place, during that time cross voting took place in the Congress fraction, and Bhai Jagtap won the elections of MLC election instead of the Chandrakant Handore, who was the first preference of the Congress. But now the all eyes is on the MLA. Like if someone will do the cross voting, it's likely that one of the candidates from either from the Maha Vikas Aghadi or from Maha Yuti will lose the election. But this election is very crucial, because from today onwards and next 3 months is very crucial for the Maharashtra politics, because Maharashtra assembly election is due in the month of October. So now all Maha Vikas Aghadi as well as Maha Yuti, both the party want that his candidate will win the election.
Congratulations to you for this initiative. Certainly, whether it's on our campus here or whether it's in terms of our CSR activities, we do what we can for, if I may call it, green cover, conservation, environment, not just trees, but for water, for example, etc. But beyond that, I would say, especially because today we have launched the Bajaj Freedom, the world's first CNG motorcycle. So I'm reminded of the words of Microsoft. Their objective was to put a computer in every home. Inspired by your project, I feel like saying perhaps our objective should be to put one clean fuel vehicle, be it CNG or electric, in every home of this country, so that every child can exercise his or her fundamental right to clean air.
Presented by
Tomorrow election is very crucial, because even the BJP has also given the ultimatum to all his MLAs not to do the cross voting, and in Bhupen Yadav himself told the core committee meeting that keep watch on all the MLAs of BJP. Beside this, Congress is also doing the same tactic, and already Eknath
There is a
Shinde
reason that the
Mahayuti
Mahayuti needs to watch out, because they will want to have as much support in order to maintain dominance. But there's also a reason why the Maha Vikas Aghadi is perhaps looking at this election very closely. Many thanks for that, Preeti. I want to take in a quick word from Yesha, who's joining us on the phone line. Yesha, let's talk about the Shiv Sena UBT candidate, Milind Narvekar. Now, he, remember, enjoys a strong connection across parties in Maharashtra. And in that sense, the Maha Vikas Aghadi is going to certainly hope that this kind of an equation that he enjoys across the political spectrum turns out to be advantage MVA. What are we learning on that front? What are the kind of back channel talks underway?
Absolutely. In fact, when you speak of Milind Narvekar, he as a leader, for that matter, is someone who enjoys support across factions. In fact, not only Uddhav Thackeray faction, but also Shiv Sena Eknath Shinde faction is something that, that look up to him. Particularly here, he's been someone who's had a stronghold, and which is where we've also, of course, we've been hearing from Shiv Sena UBT faction that there are people who are supporting their candidates. This could, in fact, really mean that Milind Narvekar, who's a strong candidate, would be the one whom even Eknath Shinde's leaders are supporting. So here, of course, strong chances for Milind Narvekar. Also, what happens here is that we've seen the performance by the Maha Vikas Aghadi has been clearly something that has been strong, particularly when it comes to the Lok Sabha election results. In fact, ever since then, there have been murmurs, there have been discussions about how there will be several leaders who would be supporting, would be looking to jump back to the original UBT, that is the UBT faction. And similarly, there have been murmurs about how there are several people from the NCP Ajit Pawar faction as well who are supporting the Sharad Pawar faction. So all of these are crucial aspects. This, in fact, once the MLC elections are done, is where we'll be able to understand the kind of support, or how much is the weight to all of these rumors that have been making rounds in the political circles. So whether they were in fact something that stood the ground, clearly when you
so that's as far as the political equations are concerned, and what's unfolding in Maharashtra. But Yesha, tell us a little bit about the number game, since numbers speak the loudest in the MLC election as well. What's the process that's going to be followed? How many votes does each candidate require in order to secure their seat for the next 6 years?
So yes, this is like a support that they require of 23 MLCs. Apart from that, now when you speak of the number game, now there are 12 positions that are vacant, of which there are 11 positions that need to be filled. So 12 candidates for 11 positions. In fact, as far as the rumors in the political circle was concerned. In fact, until 3 weeks back, it was very obvious that this election would go without any voting, and there'll be or there'll be only 11 candidates which will be sealed. However, when you speak of the BJP, they fielded 5 candidates, including Pankaj Amunde, who did not make it during the Lok Sabha election. Apart from that, when you speak of the
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post, and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. The latest flashpoint between New Delhi and Beijing. India plans to build hydropower projects in Arunachal Pradesh. China is protesting and threatening to weaponize rivers against India. We'll bring you the full story. Meanwhile, NATO is training its